Hello children, let us continue second part of History Chapter 1 Introduction to History. In the last class you learned what is history, why do we need history, who is the father of history and what are the sources of history. What is history? History is the systematic presentation of past events. Why do we need history? We need history for the development of the society, state, nation and the whole world. It warns the future decision making process. The principles, values and ideologies of our ancestors in the history will be a model and guiding force for their descendants. Who is the father of history? Herodotus of Greece is considered as the father of history. What are sources of history? The things which are used by the historians to write history are called the sources of history. The sources of history can be divided into literary sources and archaeological sources. Literary sources are further divided into written literature and oral literature. Archaeological sources, for example, coins, inscriptions, monuments, pieces of pots and pans are examples for archaeological sources. In today's video, you will learn how the Europeans have been successful in introducing a novel way of understanding and constructing history to the Indians. Indians had the knowledge of history in the form of Puranas and myths from ancient times. Puranas and myths. What comes under Puranas and myths? Stories of gods and goddesses, Ramayana, Mahabharata, stories about ancient people comes under Puranas and myths. But this was different from the European model of constructing history. The Indians had the knowledge of history, but it was completely different from the European model of constructing history. Among the Europeans who arrived in India in 16th century were Jesuit priests. Jesuit priests from Europe came to India and they undertook a systematic study to understand the lifestyle of Indians. Heinrich Roth, who was settled in Agra, translated Sanskrit grammar into Latin language about 350 years ago. So Sanskrit grammar was translated into Latin language of Rome. Heinrich Roth translated Sanskrit grammar into Latin language about 350 years ago. Later, after a century, Father Cordox identified that there are many similarities between Sanskrit and European languages. Meanwhile, the British got the revenue rights in Bengal, means the British got the power to collect land taxes in Bengal. The British officers tried to understand the history, traditions, customs, values, beliefs and laws of Indian people to strengthen their trade relations. So the British officers, to strengthen their trade relationship with Indians, tried to understand the history, traditions, customs, their values, beliefs and laws. Some administrators were attracted towards Indian literature and culture. As a result of this, Manusmriti, Bhagavad Gita and other great literary works of India were translated into English. Some of the administrators were attracted towards Indian literature and culture. As a result of this, Manusmriti, Bhagavad Gita and other great literary works were translated into English. Sir William Jones contributed immensely to the study of Indology. What do you mean by Indology? It is the study of India, that is, the study of the culture and history of India. He came to India as a judge of the Supreme Court in Bengal and established the Asiatic Society in 1784 CE. Who established the Asiatic Society? That is Sir William Jones in the year 1784 CE. What do you mean by CE? CE is Common Era. Sir William Jones, who was a multilingual expert, translated the great works like Gita Govinda, Manava Dharma Shastra and Kalidasa Shakuntala from Sanskrit to English. Sir William Jones, he was a multilingual expert, means he knew many languages. So, he translated the great works like Gita Govinda, Manava Dharma Shastra and Kalidasa's great famous drama Shakuntala from Sanskrit to English. Another prominent Orientalist and Indologist was Max Muller. Max Muller was another prominent Orientalist. What do you mean by Orientalist? Orientalist means the European scholar who are interested in the history, culture and spirituality of the Eastern countries. India is a Eastern country. The European scholars who are interested in the history, culture and spirituality of the Eastern countries are called Orientalists. He was interested in the history, culture and spirituality of India and other Asian countries. Not only that, he was interested in the study of India. He was a German scholar who wrote an English work, Sacred Book of the East, in 50 volumes. Max Muller was a German scholar. He wrote an English work named Sacred Book of the East. James Mill, a historian from Scotland, wrote History of India in 6 volumes, but these scholars like Sir James Jones, Max Muller and James Mill never visited India. Abbe Du Bois, a French missionary, arrived and settled at Ganjam near Srirangapatna. Abbe Du Bois was a French missionary. He came to India and settled at Ganjam near Srirangapatna. He lived as a sage, as a hermit, by adopting the local culture and customs. He lived like an Indian, followed Indian culture and customs. He was called Dodda Swami by the local people. Local people of Srirangapatna liked him and they called him as Dodda Swami. He wrote a book named Hindu Manners, Customs and Ceremonies. He has presented Indian customs, values, thoughts, festivals and Varnashrama system in his book. So he wrote about Indian customs, traditions, values, thoughts, festivals celebrated in India and what is Varnashrama system. In olden days, on the basis of the profession, the people were divided in the society like Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra and untouchables. Abbe Du Bois wrote about this Varnashrama system in his book. Abbe Du Bois lived here for 24 years and returned to France. So who was the French missionary who came to India and settled in Srirangapatna? He was Abbe Du Bois. Apart from this, Elphinstone, Coles, Brooke, Cunningham, Eliot and Dawson have introduced the different stages of Indian history. Francis Buchanan, Cornel Wilkes, Mackenzie, B.L. Rice, Fleet and other European scholars have successfully recorded and preserved inscriptions, manuscripts, chronicles and contemporary events for the reconstruction of Karnataka history. Thus, Europeans have been successful in introducing a novel way of understanding and constructing history to the Indians. In this way, they have provided Indians a new process of thinking and a new perspective to construct history. Thank you, children.